The laugh was the first mistake. It came sharp and smug and completely out of place, slicing through a courtroom already tight with nerves. And when that 16-year-old boy leaned back in his chair like the law was a joke written for other people, the air changed. Judge Frank Caprio didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam the gavel. He just looked over his glasses with that calm, surgical stillness that had broken grown men before breakfast. And in that instant, everyone in the room felt it. Something was about to happen that the boy, and maybe even his slick little attorney, had not seen coming. Because this was supposed to be a simple hearing, a reckless driving citation, a complaint from a crossing guard, a teenage attitude problem. That was the surface story. That was the version the boy's family had probably repeated all week at private dinners behind polished silverware and expensive smiles. Just a misunderstanding, just a kid being a kid, just one more inconvenience for people used to paying inconvenience away. But the woman sitting 3 rows back in a faded blue cardigan, hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone white, looked like she knew something the rest of the room didn't. She looked like the kind of person life had taught to stay quiet even when quiet was killing her. And before this story goes where it's about to go, I want you to do one thing for me. If you believe there is nothing more dangerous than arrogance wrapped in money and called innocence, leave your verdict in the comments right now, because the next few minutes are exactly why people still believe a courtroom can become the one place truth doesn't have to kneel. The boy's name was Tyler Whitmore, and he wore privilege the way some people wore cologne, so heavily it entered the room before he did. Crisp designer shirt, gold watch peeking from under the cuff, hair too carefully tousled to be accidental. He sat with one ankle on the opposite knee, chewing gum like he was waiting for valet service instead of judgment. Beside him was his lawyer, a sharp-faced man in an expensive charcoal suit, whose polished briefcase seemed to say what his expression did not. This would be over quickly. His client was young, connected, and in their minds, untouchable. Across the aisle sat Elena Ruiz, 68 years old, a school crossing guard with tired eyes and a posture held together by dignity alone. Her shoes were sensible and worn at the heel. Her hands trembled when she reached for a tissue, but her chin never dropped. She had been hit 2 months earlier, not knocked down completely, not in a way the defense thought sounded dramatic enough, but clipped hard enough by Tyler's speeding car to spin her sideways into the curb as she tried to stop traffic for children crossing the street. She had suffered a fractured wrist, a torn ligament in her knee, and weeks of pain she described in the quietest voice imaginable as the kind that makes stares feel like punishment. She still came to court alone. Judge Caprio glanced at the file, then at Tyler. "You've been charged with reckless driving, failure to yield in a school zone, and disorderly conduct after the incident. Is that correct?" Tyler shrugged. Actually shrugged. That's what they're saying. A few people shifted in their seats. Elena lowered her eyes. The courtroom lighting was pale and unforgiving, the kind that exposed every twitch and flinch. It lit the hard shine in Tyler's face and the deep exhaustion in hers. The defense attorney rose smoothly, confident, almost amused. He said Tyler had been distracted, that no real injury had been intended, that emotions had inflated the facts. He called it an unfortunate teenage mistake. He emphasized Tyler's grades, Tyler's future, Tyler's scholarship applications, Tyler's clean heart. He even smiled faintly when he said, "We'd ask the court not to let one emotional allegation derail a young man's life." That was when Elena looked up for the first time. Judge Caprio turned to her gently. "Ms. Ruiz, tell me what happened." Her voice came out thin at first, then steadier. She described the morning light, still low and gold. She described the children in bright backpacks. She described raising her sign, hearing the engine rev instead of brake, seeing Tyler's car lunge through the crossing like her body, and those children's bodies were obstacles, not lives. She said he had stopped only after bystanders screamed. She said when she clutched her wrist and begged him to slow down, he looked at her, rolled his eyes, and said, "Move next time. You're not important enough to stop traffic." The courtroom went silent. Even Tyler's lawyer froze for half a breath before recovering. Then came the first pivot, the first ugly spark. Tyler laughed again, low and disbelieving, and said loud enough for half the room to hear, "She's milking it. She's literally a crossing guard." A gasp rippled through the benches. Someone whispered, "Oh no." Elena did not cry. Somehow that made it worse. Judge Caprio folded his hands. "Young man," he said so quietly the whole room leaned in, "status does not reduce damage, and contempt is not a defense." Tyler smirked, but this time it didn't quite land. His lawyer touched his arm, a warning Tyler ignored. The surface dispute might still have ended there with fines and lectures if not for one small detail Judge Caprio noticed in the report. He asked for the responding officer's supplemental statement, then asked why it had been added 3 days after the original filing. The clerk handed it up. Caprio read for 15 seconds, then looked toward the prosecution table. "There's mention here of video. Why have I not seen it?" That's when everything changed. A murmur moved through the room as the city attorney stood and admitted there was nearby CCTV from a pharmacy across the street. It had taken time to retrieve. It had been added that morning. Tyler's lawyer objected, said he had not reviewed it fully. Judge Caprio allowed the playback anyway, his voice mild and merciless. "Then we can all learn together." The screen flickered to life. Grainy sidewalk, school zone sign, Elena stepping into the crosswalk, children waiting. Tyler's silver car entering frame too fast, nose dipping only at the last second. The impact was not catastrophic, but it was undeniable. Elena jerked sideways. Her stop sign flew from her hand. Children scattered backward. And then came the part Tyler had not expected anyone to see. His window rolling down, his face leaning out, his mouth clearly forming words before he sped off. The audio was poor, but the lip reading was enough. An officer who had reviewed the footage testified he believed the words were, "Then don't stand there." Tyler's jaw tightened. His lawyer stood again, this time without his earlier ease. He tried to reframe it. Teen panic, adrenaline, misinterpretation. But Judge Caprio had already seen the crack. Once men like Tyler realized the room no longer belonged to them, they never knew where to look. Tyler looked at the floor, then the gallery, then anywhere but the bench. And then the second twist hit. The prosecutor requested permission to introduce social media messages recovered under subpoena after witnesses reported online harassment. Tyler's lawyer visibly paled. He said relevance was limited. Judge Caprio said, "If your client was content to let his actions end in the street, I would agree. But if he carried the conduct into intimidation, it goes directly to character, credibility, and pattern." The messages were read aloud. A private group chat with friends, Tyler bragging that the old lady tried to play hero and got checked, Tyler saying his father would make this disappear by Friday, Tyler laughing about people who wear reflective vests because that's the best life gave them. And worst of all, a direct message sent from a burner account to Elena's grandson, "Tell Grandma to stop crying in court for money." The courtroom went dead silent, not quiet, dead silent, the kind of silence that feels like a collective moral recoil. You could hear fabric shift. You could hear someone inhale too sharply. Tyler's lawyer slowly removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose like he was trying to stop a headache that had just become a career memory. Elena closed her eyes. One tear slipped down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. Judge Caprio turned to Tyler. "Did you send those messages?" "No." "Did your friends send them for you?" "I don't control what people do." "Did you brag about this woman after injuring her?" Tyler swallowed. It was a joke. Caprio leaned back, and there it was, that terrible patient stillness again. Cruelty dressed as humor is still cruelty. The lawyer tried one last desperate maneuver. He called Tyler's father, a real estate developer with the heavy walk of a man used to entering rooms as if he owned air. He testified that his son had been raised with values, that he volunteered, that he was under stress, that the family had offered to cover medical expenses. But under a few calm questions from the judge, the truth soured fast. The offer had been conditioned on Elena signing a statement calling it an accident and declining further complaint. A letter was produced, then a voicemail, then a witness from the insurance office confirmed pressure had been applied. That's when Tyler cracked. "This is insane," he burst out, standing halfway from his seat. "She's a crossing guard. I have colleges looking at me. You're really going to wreck my life over her?" The room erupted in whispers so fast the bailiff had to call for order. Elena looked stunned, not because she had never heard contempt before, but because it had finally been spoken without disguise. Judge Caprio didn't flinch. "Sit down." Tyler sat, and then came the monologue people would replay for months. Judge Caprio took off his glasses and set them on the bench with deliberate care. His voice remained calm, but the calm had become something far more dangerous than anger. "Mr. Whitmore, You keep speaking as if this courtroom is being asked to choose between your future and this woman's dignity. That is not the choice before me. The choice before me is whether this court will reward entitlement simply because it arrives in clean shoes and a pressed shirt. You did not merely drive recklessly. You endangered children in a school zone. You struck a woman performing a public duty. You mocked her pain. You tried to hide behind your family's influence. You participated in harassment after the fact. And even now, the thing you are most concerned about is not what you did, but what accountability might cost you. He paused, and the courtroom went silent again. Let me tell you something that young men like you learn far too late. Character is what remains when money, family name, and excuses are taken away, and yours today stands here bankrupt. Tyler's face changed. For the first time since he entered the room, he looked young, not innocent, just suddenly, terrifyingly young, as if he had taken one step too far and found the floor gone. Judge Caprio continued, each word landing like a door locking. You called this woman unimportant, yet she rose before dawn to protect children who are not even her own. You treated her as disposable, yet she has shown more composure in pain than you have shown in comfort. So hear this carefully because I want it understood beyond this courtroom. Privilege is not a license, and disrespect is not a personality. When arrogance becomes harm, the law must become memory. That line hit the room like thunder. His ruling came next, and it did not sound procedural. It sounded final. Tyler was found responsible on all counts. Because of the dangerous school zone conduct, the post-incident harassment, and the attempted coercion through family pressure, Judge Caprio imposed the maximum juvenile detention allowed under the statute, followed by probation, mandatory counseling, community service performed specifically in pedestrian safety and public assistance programs, revocation of driving privileges, restitution for Elena's medical costs, and a formal no-contact order protecting her and her family. The lawyer closed his file without speaking. Tyler stared straight ahead, lips parted, as if language itself had abandoned him. Then Judge Caprio added one more sentence, and it became the moment everyone remembered. You thought jail was where other people's sons go. Today, it is where consequences go to introduce themselves. A collective exhale moved through the courtroom. Elena covered her mouth, not with triumph, with relief so deep it looked painful. The bailiff stepped toward Tyler. His shoulders, so loose and careless at the start, had turned rigid and hollow. He looked back once at his father, who could do nothing. Nothing. No check to write, no call to make, no assistant to dispatch, no polished lie large enough to swallow what had finally happened in public. Later, people said the aftermath mattered almost as much as the sentence. Elena's medical bills were paid. The school district honored her for bravery. Neighbors organized support for her family after learning she had been working double shifts to help raise her grandson. Tyler's messages became part of a broader conversation in the city about juvenile privilege, intimidation, and how often victims are pushed to stay quiet for the comfort of people with better lawyers. The father's letter leaked, his business took a public hit, and the lawyer, who had entered that room expecting a routine cleanup, was seen outside the courthouse standing motionless for nearly a full minute. Briefcase at his side, face drained, as cameras caught the expression of a man realizing he had just watched a teenager mistake arrogance for immunity in front of the one judge in town who could smell moral rot before the first lie finished leaving a mouth. As for Elena, weeks later she returned to that same crosswalk in the early morning light. The knee brace was still there, the wrist still bothered her in cold weather, but children crossed safely, cars stopped, and for the first time in a long time, when she raised her sign, she did not feel invisible. That is what justice looks like when it finally stops negotiating with cruelty. Not noise, not revenge, not theater for its own sake, just truth, exposed under hard courtroom lights until the person who caused the harm has nowhere left to hide. So if you felt that moment when the courtroom went silent, if you believe some lessons only arrive when pride is stripped down to consequence, leave your thoughts in the comments, like this story, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who still needs to hear that no family name, no attitude, and no amount of money places anyone above the day judgment decides to speak.